Okay, welcome to episode 46 of the iPad podcast by maxfuture.com website. This is Lex. So I'm releasing this on Monday, the 21st of March, because I was sick on the 20th. So please, I apologize for the delay. This has been my first full week of using the iPad 2. And I got to tell you, I'm really glad I got the iPad 2. And here's why I'm really glad. Because I think it's worth the upgrade. I had the iPad 1, 64 gigabytes. I started this podcast shortly after I bought it last year on April 3rd, 2010. And it's definitely worth it. It's definitely worth it, I'd say, for the faster speed, both in video processing and also in the processor itself. The more RAM you have, and also the lightness of it. It's thinner, it's lighter. I mean, I'd like it to get even lighter, but it's definitely worth the upgrade. So this week I'm going to discuss iPad news, but I also wanted to go more in depth on some stuff that really shows off the iPad 2. Now, the first thing I want to tell everybody is that it's definitely a content creating device. I say that it's a content creating device because a lot of people were complaining that the iPad is only a content consuming device. But it's actually, I think even the first iPad was a content producing device. For example, the first iPad came with, right off the bat, with Pages and Keynote, so you could create Word documents or Pages documents and Keynote slide presentations. But also there were a number of apps that worked on it. Like I really like the HT Recorder app, which is an audio recording app. And I also have that on the iPhone. And I would record a lot of podcasts on the first generation iPad. And plus you could also, there were photo editing apps and such things like that. But here's the thing with the iPad 2, now that we have more RAM, 512 megabytes, now that we have double the processing power with dual-core processors, now that we have faster video processing with 9 times more video speed, it becomes definitely a content creation device. And what content did I create? Well, the content that I created, I have this other podcast, the Apple podcast by Max Future, and I have that come out also in video form. And this week, I recorded the Apple podcast in iMovie for the iPad, which is a new application that costs $5 that Apple released along with the iPad 2. And I recorded the audio. What I did is I narrated the audio over picture and maybe even movie clips that I imported into iMovie. And iMovie has a narration function. So you create a project in iMovie. Here, while I'm talking, I'm launching iMovie. So you create a project, and in your project, you can name it, is where you drag in anything you need. So here's how it works. So you can press the plus sign on the interface, and that says create new project. And you have a timeline on the bottom. In the top right, you have a window, which is your viewing window. And on the left, you have like a sort of a browser window where you can browse the media that you want to import. And you're giving 3 choices. There are 3 buttons for browsing the media that you want to import. The first one's like a square, and that just taps into your videos. And I believe it only taps into the videos that are in your iPhoto app on your iPad, because I don't think the videos are on anything else like I don't think they're in that like video app that you have on the iPad. And you can just browse your videos there and pull them in. The other thing you can do is there's a camera button, and that goes into your Photos app and just shows your photos, not your videos in there. So it's interesting because your videos are in your Photos app, but the iMovie app sort of treats them as if they're in separate places. They're not. They're all in there. And so there's different, if you have different folders in your photo app, your Apple Photo app, you can browse in those folders. Like the ones that I have are camera roll, and then different imports that I've done, and then the different dates of different folders. So if you go in, and then in the third category is music or sound. And that brings up the audio media, and it's organized by theme music that comes with iMovie, sound effects, playlists, albums, artists, and songs. The latter four are what's in your iTunes or your iPod library on the iPad. So theme music, you've got you don't have a lot of themes, and maybe Apple will let you add themes later. But you have bright, iReport, modern, neon, news, playful, simple, travel. One thing that's a little annoying is you can't really preview the music before you import it. It just adds in. And if you want to undo it, you gotta you gotta sort of tap on it. It layers the music all over it. It would be nice if you could preview the music. So you don't have this ability to preview the theme music and the sound effects. So for sound effects, you have alarm, applause, arpeggio, bark, bell tower, bicycle, boing, booing crowd, bubbles. So you have a whole bunch of sort of gag sound effects. And I don't know for professional production how useful that's going to be, but for family movies and stuff, that's going to be fun. And so then you have your playlists, and it gives you pretty much everything that's in your iPod app on the iPad. And you also have albums, so you can just go through all your music, and you have songs and whatever. So, okay, so that's all your media. So the beauty is the way you import movies and clips is you just tap on them in that browser, and they drop down wherever you have the playhead. Now the playhead works, you don't drag the playhead, rather you drag the timeline so that where you want the playhead to be, and the playhead's always in the middle of iMovie, you drag the timeline, and that's where the movie will be. It's an interesting way to do things. Okay, so you drag the clips in, whether it's a movie, a video, and that's how you build up your project. Now let me just point out one thing. Like, I added this music theme to this project that I'm working on, and basically creates a green layer over the whole timeline. And it's basically, the music theme is viewed similar to the way in iMovie. When you have a theme music, it sort of wraps around all the media, and it's sort of in the background of everything, and you can't really drag it around as opposed to an individual audio track. You can put individual audio tracks, but theme music is treated as sort of like a bed that captures all around the media. Now, you can undo that, the theme music, when you add it, by there's a button in the top right called undo, and that takes it out. So you can undo actions in iMovie. Now, here's the thing. So when you have your media in and you add it in, it goes in where the timeline is. Now, what I like about it is that you can drag clips, but if you just touch them, the clip, whether it's a video or a picture, is surrounded by this yellow or greenish yellow highlight, and there's this little flag that comes up, and that means it's in a state that you can now edit it, that you can reduce it, you can drag it, you can make it smaller. So you can drag the ends or to make it shorter, or you can drag it out to make it longer. For example, photos, the time length of a photo, I don't know, the default might be 4 seconds or 3 seconds or 2 seconds. But if you want to make the photo last longer, you drag it out, and you just stretch it out. So what I did when I made this podcast is I would capture a photo through my iPad. So one of my techniques is I go to websites where I read interesting stories, and I want to give them credit when I do the video podcast, and I use the inherent capture tool in the iPad or the iPhone to capture a screenshot of the browser, which is you just press the top button with the home button, and that just captures whatever's on your screen. And that goes directly into your photo library. So you could theoretically pull that into iMovie, but one limitation of iMovie is you can't really do some more advanced editing of the photos. You can't rotate them, and you can't crop them. You can do sort of a Ken Burns effect, but you can't rotate them or crop them. But here's my workflow then. I have a free Adobe app called Photoshop Express, or PE Express, for the iPhone and iPad. It's actually an iPhone app, but it's a free app from Adobe and allows you to edit your photos and then save them in the photo app. So what I do is I take a whole bunch of screenshots of websites that have stories that I'm going to be commenting on, and I crop them. And sometimes one limitation is if you screenshot something in landscape mode, it doesn't come in the right alignment in iMovie. It looks sideways because iMovie is viewing the photos, or the photo app is viewing them as being taken in portrait mode. So if I've screen captured something in landscape mode, I have to crop it and rotate it in the Adobe PE app, and then save it into the photo app. So that is one limitation with iMovie. You can drag the length of a photo and make it more lengthy, and you can use the Ken Burns effect, but you can't do sort of rotation or cropping of photo media that you're going to use in iMovie. So once I've done all the photo cropping and rotating in the Adobe PE Photoshop, app, I save it back into the photo library of iPad, and then I work with those in the iMovie, because iMovie automatically recognizes that they're there, and I drag them into the timeline. And then you can add, in addition to adding music and sound effects, there's a microphone on the right side of the iMovie, which allows you to record audio, narrate alongside the media. And so I just point the audio where I want it, parallel to the track that is the photo or the movie track, and I record my comments about, what that relate to that content. The other thing is there's a movie button too, so you could also just do a movie of using the front camera or the back camera. So you could do a video podcast by just capturing yourself talking into the iPad. So that's my general workflow, and Apple gives you transitions between the clips. Now, one thing that I really appreciated, though, was when I would create like an audio soundtrack and have it be parallel to the video or photo track. let's say I wanted to then add another clip at the beginning of the sequence of clips. iMovie's smart enough to know that everything should be pushed back the same amount. The alignments are all lined up. So I don't have to then go and, even if I have different tracks, realign everything. It just knows to move everything. So I thought that was kind of cool. Now, one limitation is you can't split tracks in iMovie, whether it's a video or a movie. You can't split it. However, you can. There's a workaround, and what you do is you can shorten a movie clip or photo clip on either side by dragging the end towards the middle. So what you should do if you want to split something is just import the video twice, and on one clip you drag it from one end, and on the other clip you drag it from the other end. So you could basically, let's say you didn't want the middle of a 20-second movie clip, right? So you have this 20-second movie clip. So let's say you just want the first 5 seconds and the last 5 seconds of the clip. So what you would do is you would import the 20-second clip in twice. On the first one, you would drag the right side of the clip 15 seconds to the left, so that you just have the first 5 seconds of the clip. And on the second clip, you would do vice versa. You would drag the clip on the left all the way to the right until you're more than 5 seconds from the end. So there is a workaround to doing splitting a clip. The workaround is you have to drag it in twice. Now here's where there is limits there too, because it only works if you could drag it in from your media library, but the narration is not in your media library, and you can't export stuff into your media library. So the narration, you can't split it. You can shorten it, you can cut it off on one end or the other end, but you can't split it in two. So this workaround for creating a split using just importing the media twice doesn't work for a narration, because the narration is not in your media library. Now, I thought, you could maybe export your project into a movie, and then it would be in your movie library. So that is a possibility, which is, actually, that is a turnaround. Let's say, but then your whole project is a movie, basically. That would be in your media library. So there is theoretically, if you just recorded an audio podcast with no media, you could export it into your media library and then split it by bringing it in twice and manipulating both halves. Anyways, that's a little too much on that topic. But the other cool things are you've got these transitions between the clips, and it's very easy to manipulate the transitions. They're just automatically there. The default is no transition, and the beauty of it is you get a choice of you have cross dissolve, and they're in half a second increments, or you could use the transition of the theme if you had selected the theme when you had created the project. So there's pretty much that, and let's see what else you've got. And under settings, you can choose a theme. I have this project on no theme, so you can choose under project settings theme music on or off, loop background music on or off, fade in from black, fade out to black on or off, and those are it. So under project settings, you have Wow, you have all sorts of projects. You have CNN iReport, which is you have a news project setting. You have travel. You have playful. You have bright and modern. And that's it. So it's somewhat limited. You just go back to my projects when you want to when you want to do something with it. So you're back into the entry screen of iMovie, and you can, if you press the button that has the arrow going out, it gives you a choice to share your movie project to Camera Roll, to YouTube, to Facebook, to Vimeo, to CNN iReport, or to iTunes. Now, if you select send to iTunes, it doesn't go to iTunes on your iPad. I thought, oh, wouldn't that be cool if you could just send it to your iTunes and your iPad? No, it sets it up so that when you are connected to iTunes, the iMovie project is in iTunes. Now, here's the thing. I thought that means you could actually take the project out of the iPad. And I thought, oh, this is great. I can now open it up in iMovie on the Macintosh. But no, you can export the iMovie project and then edit it on another iPad or another iPhone with the iMovie app. So for now, the iMovie project in iMovie on the iPad, you can save it and edit it on other iDevices that run iMovie, but not on the iMovie program on the Mac. And this is different than the GarageBand app, because the GarageBand app, you can export the GarageBand project and then open it up in GarageBand on a Mac. So this is a little bit of a difference. So the movie, you can send it to Camera Roll. When you say send it to Camera Roll, it gives you a choice for export sizes. You can save it as medium 360p, large 540p, or HD 720p. And, it took a while. I had an hour-long video podcast at 720p. It took a while to export it, but then again, it would take a while to export it on a Macintosh. I haven't tried directly doing it to YouTube. It seemed to be glitchy in exporting it to YouTube, recognizing my credentials. One glitch, though, in iMovie is that I recorded different narration segments to different videos and picture clips, and I noticed there was a glitch because I sort of moved things around and I edited a bit and I moved the sequence around, and I noticed there were gaps where some of my audio tracks were missing, but the audio was there, it would still play, but you wouldn't see the track. So there were it looked like there were gaps in my narration, but the narration was all there. So there I think are some bugs in iMovie, particularly if you get really big, complicated projects like I had for the episode 63 of the Apple podcast. So if you want to see what it looked like, it was a very sort of simple edit. Take a look at the episode 63 of the Apple podcast that I have on iTunes. Okay, one story that's sort of going around the internet is whether the new iPad 2, because it has the thinner glass on the screen, will it cause it to break more readily? And there's a story out on March 17 on computerworld.com, which has the headline, "Thinner iPad 2 glass, will it break?" And if you read the article, it sounds like the experts or analysts who cover this thing are sort of mixed on whether or not it will result in things breaking. And frankly, until we use the iPad 2 for a while and hear feedback from customers, it's going to be hard to figure out if it's going to break more readily than the iPad 1. I mean, I think it's built very solid, and I don't plan to misuse my iPad 2 any more than I tried to misuse my first iPad. Okay, so the article basically says, some analysts who have torn apart the iPad 2 said that the new design will prevent shattered screens because Apple's using a new, more flexible material. Other people, though, are saying that because it's thinner, it went from being 0.8 millimeters thin to 0.6 millimeters thin. It will increase the likelihood of broken screens. And Computer World cites some guy named Aaron Vronko, who's the CEO of a Michigan-based rapid repair company, a repair shop and do-it-yourself supplier for iPhone, iPod, and iPad. And Vronko says he pulled apart an iPad 2 to get an idea of how Apple designed its new tablet. And he says, quote, "On balance, I would guess this design change results in a modest increase in broken screens and at times greater damage, with both the digitizer glass and LCD modules being broken," end quote, said Vronko when asked his take on the impact of the iPad 2's thinner screen. Well, that's kind of lame. I mean, that's not really an analysis. It's just some guy who repairs things thinking that it's going to result in more breakage. The same article says he cautioned the modest increase should be judged in the context of the iPad's overall durability. Okay, so the other app I want to really talk about that I've had an in-depth look at is the Real Racing 2 HD app that came out. It's a game from Firemint. Now, Firemint had already on the iPad the Real Racing app for the first generation iPad, and I've had that and I've played that, and it's been fun to play with, but it's been taken to new heights with Real Racing 2 HD. Now, I was kind of annoyed because it's not a free upgrade. I already purchased Real Racing 1, I guess, for $10, and they make you pay another $10 for Real Racing 2 HD. But it's worth it because what they've done is they must have had an inside look at the iPad 2 and the faster processor and the faster video graphics and the faster and the more RAM, because they geared Real Racing 2 HD for the iPad 2 and all its horsepower and the added gyroscope. So Real Racing 2 is really much faster than Real Racing 1. The performance is much, much better, and it's very addictive. And so I've been playing around with it, and it's very cool. Okay, so one of my favorite new apps that really shows you how well the iPad 2 works with its new gyroscope and the great processing power is the Real Racing 2 HD app. There was Real Racing 1 which came out, but Real Racing 2 was specifically designed to take advantage of the great processing power of the iPad 2 plus the gyroscope. So the controls are really fantastic. And what's great about it is you play online with hundreds of other people in different tournaments, and you start out at the club level, and you get a certain amount of money and you buy a car. I think you start off with $25,000 of tournament money, and you buy a car, and the cheapest cars are the Volkswagen Golf car. And you compete, and the more you compete, you get points for being a better player, but also you win cash prizes. And with the cash prizes, you can buy accessories for your car to make it perform better, and you can buy better cars. And I'm still at the first level, club races, but you can go all the way up, I guess, to ultimately Grand Prix racing. And the thing is, you can see how much Real Racing 2 HD on the iPad 2 is better than Real Racing, the first HD that was on the iPad. The frame rates, there's no dropout. It's very responsive. The video is almost seamless. You feel like you're flowing and just completely racing in the, in a race. And you can also mirror it with the VGA out or the HDMI cables so that you're actually playing it on a big screen. And I just can't say enough for this app. I think it really shows what you can do with this high performance game. So I put out a video where I show how one race looks like, both on a LCD screen, a computer screen, or a big LCD TV screen. And so I have some of that footage in the video version of this podcast, and you should check it out. But it's a great app. It's a little pricey. It's $9.99, but it really is, I think, one of the few apps that are out there in terms of a game that really show what the raw horsepower of the iPad 2 plus its gyroscope for control can do. I mean, with the first Real Racing HD game, which did not have a gyroscope to use, taking turns were a little sluggish and you would skid, and this is just much more responsive. So here, if you have the video version of this, you can see some of the racing, and it's also on my website at maxfuture.com, and then my YouTube channel at maxfuture channel on YouTube. So check it out. Okay, so some big news that came out on March 20th, 2011 that can affect people using the iPad or iPhone, particularly if they like to use it on AT&T's network, is that AT&T on Sunday, March 20th, announced that it was purchasing the T-Mobile network in the United States from Deutsche Telekom, the big German telephone company, for $39 billion in cash and stock. And this is huge because basically this will vault AT&T, if it's approved, to number one in total customers in the United States and vaulting past Verizon. So, I mean, this could take a long while to be approved by regulators in Washington, D.C., like the Justice Department that looks at antitrust issues, the FTC that looks at antitrust issues, and the FCC that regulates the wireless spectrum. But if this goes through, it could have an effect on iPad users and also iPhone users. Now, on the plus side, this could be good because it may improve the AT&T network, because AT&T will suddenly get access to more sites and land where it can build towers, and it'll integrate T-Mobile's technology, and both AT&T and T-Mobile use the same GSM cell technology. So in some ways it's a natural fit. Sprint, which is the fourth place provider, uses CDMA, which is what Verizon also uses. And so who knows, maybe Verizon will go after Sprint. They use different spectrum, though, for the GSM, for the 3G network. And both of them, both AT&T and T-Mobile, are developing, the LTE, which is going to be true 4G data speed. So the number of users are going to increase up to, I think it's going to be like 140 million customers altogether when they combine vaulting over Verizon, which I think is around 106 or 110 million customers. But the big thing will be that, it might improve the technology for data connection by having just a more extensive network by the two combining. Now, the downside is competition. AT&T may feel that it can raise prices or offer less benefits to users because there's not going to be as many places for you to go with your iPad or your iPhone. And, that could be what the regulators are going to look at in terms of competition. So we'll have to see how this plays out. Okay, so one sort of troubling news that comes out of AT&T and the iPad, and that relates to the iPad, is that there's a story out on Ars Technica that's also circulating on the internet that says that AT&T is shaming
unauthorized phone tetherers. Now, as some of you may know, if you have an iPhone and you jailbreak it, you can install the MyWi jailbreak app, which allows you to tether your iPhone through a Wi-Fi hotspot to other devices like the iPad and use your unlimited data plan or some other data plan that you have with the iPhone and AT&T to connect, let's say, your iPad to the internet through the data connection. And apparently the story is that AT&T is cracking down and sending emails and text messages to people who have the iPhone and who have an unlimited data plan or some other large data plan. And they're basically saying, oh, you need the tethering plan, which costs another $20. And if we don't hear from you, we're going to switch you over to that and charge you another $20 a month. And the question is, first of all, is AT&T sending out these text messages to people who are not doing a jailbreak Wi-Fi tethering, or is it just people who have unlimited data plans and are using the data plans a lot? No one knows exactly, but it does impact the iPad in this way. You may have just gotten the Wi-Fi iPad and that one with 3G on it, and you might want to just connect occasionally via your iPhone if you have an unlimited data plan. Well, now there's a danger that AT&T will, see that you're doing this somehow and charge you $20 more a month. Now, I don't know if that's possible. One story on the internet is that AT&T is sending these text messages to people who are using crazy amounts of data, like maybe 20 gigabytes of data a month. Remember, AT&T's current plans are, if you're grandfathered in, you pay $30 a month on the iPhone for an unlimited data plan, $25 a month for a 2 gigabyte data plan. And frankly, even through heavy usage, I don't really go above 2 gigabytes data. So anyways, the question now is, what should you do? Should you take the chance and jailbreak your iPhone and tether it to the iPad? Or should you just go out and buy your own plan or do official tethering by AT&T for $20 a month? If you do that, AT&T then doubles your limit to 4 gigabytes total between your iPhone and your iPad, and you can legally, or according to AT&T's rules, do that Wi-Fi tethering between your iPad. Of course, if you get an iPad with 3G service, AT&T charges you $25 a month to have 2 gigabytes of data on your iPad. So those are your choices. Now, you might want to think twice about doing a Wi-Fi hotspot between your iPhone and your iPad, or even jailbreaking your iPhone and doing one through the jailbreaking app, MyWi. In other words, whether from AT&T's authorization or without its authorization, you might think twice about doing a Wi-Fi hotspot. And why is that? Well, I think I've reported this before, but I'm discovering anecdotal information. I've done my own little tests, which seem to indicate that the iPad 3G connection through AT&T is better in places where there is congestion in AT&T's traffic on cell phone towers than with the iPhone 3G. And why do I say this? Well, at my place of business in the past, I've always had trouble late in the afternoon with 3G connection on my iPhone. I get full bars, but the data slows down to a crawl. And when I run certain apps that measure data speeds, it's really slow. And recently, I got an iPad with 3G, and I activated it for AT&T data. So I have both an iPhone and an iPad that have their own 3G data plans. Now here's the thing, I did a head-to-head test between launching both the iPhone and the iPad at the same time, this data connection using a speed testing app. And first of all, the iPad connected much quicker. It started doing the test much quicker than the iPhone. And the data speeds were very different. The iPhone got 824 kilobits per second download and 311 kilobits per second upload. In contrast, the iPad got a whopping 1486 kilobits per second download speed and a pretty fast upload speed. So this is, what's counting for this discrepancy? And I have, if you're looking at the video version of this, screenshots for under the Extreme Speed Test Labs test of both, and there is a difference. So what's accounting for this difference? Well, my speculation is that both devices have a strong connection to the AT&T tower, but I don't know much about technology, but my suspicion is that AT&T is treating connections from an iPad differently than from an iPhone. One example could be, what if you view a tower like a bee's nest, and 80% of the nest can only have a certain type of bee land on it, and 20% of the nest only have another type of bee land on it. And let's say the iPad is the part with 20%. So maybe there are fewer iPads around, so it can land on that 20% easier than the other 80%. Maybe there's way too many bees all trying to land on that part of the hive. Now, look, again, I'm not an expert on this, and I'm going to call AT&T, and I'm going to ask them flat out, what's going on? Why am I getting double the download speeds on my 3G connection from my iPad and only half that speed download on my iPhone? I mean, maybe the answer is also the antenna. Maybe the antenna is better on the iPad than the iPhone, and so I'm getting a better data connection in that respect. But I find the whole thing very peculiar. Why is there any difference at all? They're both really top-end devices. They should have, in the same spot, similar data speeds. So let's see, maybe AT&T can answer that question for me. Thanks. Okay, I want to alert you to another issue. If you do get an iPad, whether it's an iPad or an iPad 2, you should be careful about a promotion that AT&T has been running recently. And AT&T on its website has been saying that if you sign up for their Data Connect personal data plans, which are $14.99 for a 250 megabyte plan or 2 gigabytes of data for $25 per month, that if you do that, you get 1 month free. Well, I never had an iPad with 3G data. I just got the iPad 2 with 3G data on AT&T, and my prior iPad was only Wi-Fi. So I saw this ad and I decided to sign up for data. So I did it through, now let me tell you, this website doesn't say anything about how you should sign up. You can sign up for this data and this plan through your website, or you can call AT&T, but it doesn't say you have to do it a certain way. So I tried to sign up through my iPad, and in your settings in iPad, you can sign up for an AT&T plan, and you put in your credit card information, and you sign up, and you're charged either $15 or $225, depending on which plan you do. And I did that. And after I did that, I called AT&T to make sure that I got my $25 free month. And AT&T told me when I called, oh, no, I don't get the free month because I signed up through my iPad through the prepaid plan. And apparently there's a difference. One plan is you sign up on your iPad, through your iPad, just for a prepaid plans. In other words, you pay $25 ahead of time for the month, and if you don't use it or cancel it, you don't get the $25 back. But apparently that plan, you don't get the free month. Instead, you can only get the free month if you sign online for the continuing, plan where you're on a sort of automatic update every month, signing up again for it. So that plan requires, credit approval to have running credit, and they'll give you a free month for that. But look, I found this highly misleading because the website doesn't make it clear that there's what's the difference in the names of the plan, and that the $25 is just a free month if you sign up through the website or call them. So I called AT&T, and they were like, nope, we can't credit your month back. However, I finally got through to one operator who was very kind, and she basically said that she asked me if I had an iPhone, and I said yes. And she said that she would credit my iPhone account $25, and so I was getting back my $25 for this month that I prepaid on the iPad, and she was going to sign me up for this recurring plan starting next month, and I'll get a free month starting next month. So in the end, I got 2 months free. But still, for every person like me who spotted this issue and called them up, how many people are signing up for the AT&T data service on their iPad thinking that they're getting $25 free when they're not? So you might want to keep an eye out for that. Or you might want to call up AT&T and go that route to get the first $25 free month. So anyway, little observation. Now in this past week since the iPad 2 came out, one thing that has come out is a better understanding of what's inside the iPad 2. The website Ars Technica had a good article really based on the website iFixit's analysis. And because iFixit is a famous website that takes apart Apple products and tells you what's in there. And the Ars Technica article entitled "iPad 2 and Smart Cover Teardown, My God, It's Full of Magnets" gives a really good overview of what's in there. And, in terms of the internal architecture, according to Ars Technica and iFixit, the iPad 2 is mostly unchanged from the original iPad. Now, according to them, the aluminum unibody has been redesigned to be flatter and thinner than the original. We all know that. And that required a sort of component rearrangement. According to the article, the A5 processor, which replaces the previous A4 model, is new, but touch controllers and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth modules remain the same. So really only sort of some things were changed. According to the article, the main changes include, we know it to be the front and rear camera, and according to them, it was pulled from the iPod Touch. In other words, it's the same cameras as the current iPod Touch has. Now, the gyroscope is the same one found in the iPhone 4 and 4th generation iPod Touch, and so that's recycled from there. And the tiny rear-facing speakers have replaced the ported speakers of the original iPad. Now, in terms of the LCD panel and the front glass, both have been reduced in thickness and in weight, and this accounts, according to the article, for a large part of the weight difference between the first one and the second one. And so, according to Ars Technica, Apple opted to glue the front glass on, similar to the iPod Touch, instead of using clips like the first generation iPad. And this reduces the repairability of the front glass, which meant that this means that Apple could shave a millimeter or two off of all three of the iPad dimensions by doing this. So in terms of the battery, the iPad 2 has a 3-cell battery while the first iPad had only 2 cells. So this doesn't change the hours. I mean, they're both still capable of a good 10 hours of use. But instead, they have thinner 3 cells, and that's where the trade-off is. Before they use 2 thicker cells, and the total capacity is just slightly different. It goes to 25 watt hours, up from 24.8 watt hours of the original. And another internal change is, of course, the smart cover. And the smart cover, is magnetic, and it has 21 magnets in the smart cover, and it corresponds to 10 magnets that are along the side of the iPad. So altogether there are 31 magnets. And one of the there are 6 magnets along the left side of the iPad, arranged in 2 arrays of one long magnet paired with 2 shorter magnets. And one array is positive, negative, positive poles, while the other is negative, positive, negative. And the complementary poled magnets are in the hinge of the smart cover, which is why it only attaches on the left-hand side and automatically snaps into the right spot. According to the article, there are also 4 magnets along the right side of the iPad's 2's front bezel where the smart cover closes. And there are 12 corresponding magnets in the smart cover. And so, according to iFixit, the additional magnets are needed to fold the smart cover up and hold on to the steel plate in the last segment of the cover, forming a triangle and morphing into a stand for the iPad 2. In addition, extra magnets in the smart case are necessary to form a strong magnet-to-steel bond to form a stand. So, and in terms of the magnets, they don't have any special properties, according to the Ars Technica article. They interviewed a guy at iFixit who said, sadly, this is his quote, none of the 31 magnets inside the devices had any special properties. All of them were the standard 2-pole kind, but they were arrayed in such a way that made clamping the smart cover to the iPad 2 quite easy, end quote. So, all in all, I mean, a lot of it is the same as the first iPad, but there are these slight little things that are improvements, and the main thing I think are the cover, the cameras, the thinner design, the lighter weight. So all in all, very cool improvements. Okay, so some of you may know that in the coming week or so, the New York Times app on the iPad will be going officially to a paywall, where you'll have to pay $20 a month in 4-month increments to get content in your New York Times app on the iPad. And the thing that I find crazy is that the New York Times also has an iPhone app, and it's charging $15 a month for that. So if you have both an iPhone with the New York Times app and the iPad app, you're going to have to pay $35 a month to have the content on both the iPhone and the iPad, which is really crazy because that comes, I don't know, over $400 a year. And if you got the paper version of the New York Times in New York City, I think it's something like $280 a year, which is cheaper, and you would get, for that price, not only the paper version, but also the iPad app subscription and the iPhone subscription. So here's the sad reality. If you want the New York Times on your iPhone, your iPad, and on the web, it's cheaper to order the paper version than it is to not order the paper version, which I think is crazy. Now, one of my favorite columnists on the web, John Gruber of Daring Fireball, he has an interesting take on it in his blog, and it's regarding the New York Times paywall, and he says, I think it's too expensive and too confusing. $15 per month for unlimited website access and smartphone app access, and $20 a month for the web and tablet app access, $35 for web, phone, and tablet access. And they're not really months, it's a 4-week, I'm sorry, not 4-month, 4-week billing cycle. Why not just $15 per month for everything, or $10 a month for the website and an extra $5 or $10 for the apps? The distinction between phone apps and tablet apps is just confusing, and the Times should get its software in order before charging extra for it. I might pay $5 extra per month for the iPad app, but not in its current state, where it's buggy, crashy, and too slow. I'm willing to pay for the New York Times, but I don't want to feel nickel and dimed. The above is my take as a consumer and longtime daily reader of the Times journalism. Professionally, this paywall is likely going to result in my linking to stories at NewYorkTimes.com far less frequently than I used to. They claim that referrals from blogs won't count against your free article count. But if they're liberal in that regard, it'll prove too easy to circumvent the paywall. I sure hope this works out for them, but I wouldn't bet on it. So look, I agree with John Gruber. I mean, I think their whole system's a little whacked out, because you get a certain number of free hits per month through the browser, and supposedly up to a certain number of linked items that you go to the New York Times, you'll be able to get access. But if you just want to straight out read it on your iPad or on the web straight out, they're going to start charging you. And I think they're charging too much. The whole point should be to save paper and reduce paper, so the iPad version should be cheaper. So you should write the New York Times if you're as unhappy with this as I am. Now, what is the state of purchasing an iPad 2? And it still looks kind of grim. If you go to the Apple website store, all 18 models of the iPad are currently requiring 4 to 5 weeks delivery before they ship out. Now, I suggest if you don't know what to do, you should just go ahead and order it, because Apple won't charge your credit card until it ships. So go ahead and just order it, and go to try to find it somewhere else, like stand in line in a store or check stores, but it doesn't cost you anything to really order it online. And if you find it somewhere else, just go back to the website. It's very easy to log into your account and cancel the order. On the March 11th, before I bought the iPad 2 in line, I ordered it online, and it said 3 to 5 or 5 to 7 days delivery then, and I bought it in line, and then I went on in Apple's online store and canceled it. So it's still kind of bleak. I mean, it's a long wait, 4 to 5 weeks, but soon you'll have it. So just hang in there and you'll get it somehow. Now, the stories in terms of what's going on at the actual Apple stores that are brick and mortar are that there are still long lines. And Cult of Mac, for example, has an article entitled "The iPad 2 Lines Are Ridiculous." And what's going on is, it sounds like Apple ships some iPad 2s to various Apple stores and to various retailers that work with it, like Best Buy and Walmart and Target and Verizon and AT&T. And you don't know how much there's going to be, so people are waiting in line first thing in the morning before the stores open, hoping to catch some of the supply. And so it's really hit and miss, and the lines are really long. And apparently, like, let's say the store and the Fifth Avenue store in New York, I mean, not everyone who waits in line every morning gets an iPad 2, only those who are at the front. So it's a real problem. Now, one thing that's going on, at least in New York, is that there are these Chinese middlemen who want to buy the iPad and sell it in China for a huge markup, and they're actually paying people to stand in line, because Apple limits the sales to 2 people per line, and and then they buy the iPads for huge markups from the people who just come out of the store. Sometimes is 100% more than the face value of an iPad 2 for resale in China and other places overseas where wealthy people are willing to pay a huge premium. And I guess it's, when you have a shortage like this, there are going to be wealthy people around the world who want to get a hold of this device as a status symbol or simply because they love Apple products. And so there's this middle market. Now, one guy online was complaining, I read this story, he was complaining that he bought two, and then the next day he went in line waiting for another two, and that Apple employees told him he's limited to two as a customer, that he can't wait in line the second day or the third day. And he seemed, to make a big deal out of this, like it's unfair. But really, why does he want to keep going back and buying more and more, unless he's speculating in the iPad? And I don't think that's right. There's a lot of people who just want to buy it to use it, and Apple should try to prevent people who are speculating and trying to buy huge hordes of this stuff to resell it at a higher price. Anyways, I expect these lines to hopefully diminish, as we go forward every day. Now, a related article appeared, I guess, in TU or Cult of Mac, that the prices for the old iPads are plunging. And of course they're plunging because, the more the iPad 2 is out, the more people are going to try to unload the first iPad. But also, a number of things have happened. Since the launch on March 11th, AT&T announced that it is slashing the prices of iPads. Now, late last week, AT&T had announced that it was selling 3G iPads and the prices were severely lowered. For example, the 64 gigabyte first generation iPad with 3G was selling for only $529. Originally, that was selling for $699, and Apple had dropped the price of that down to, I guess, $599. But AT&T was also selling the 32 gigabyte 3G model also for $529. So basically, for the same price, you could get the 32 gigabyte or the 64 gigabyte model. And the 3G version that is 16 gigabytes, AT&T is selling for only $429. So if you're looking for a cheap way to get into the iPad world, AT&T seems to be it. I mean, look, I sold my old first generation iPad with no 3G after March 11th or the day before March 11th for $425 plus shipping, which brought it to $440. So I think I got a good price for that, but I don't think I could get that price now for the 64 gigabyte Wi-Fi model. I mean, I think I'd be lucky to get $350 for it now or $380. So, I guess if you go on eBay, you can see what these prices are like. I'm sure they're severely down. Now, we soon may be getting an update of iOS 4.3 for the iPad, and this is according to the Boy Genius report, based on an article I saw in Cult of Mac. And according to the story, that within the next couple of weeks there should be iOS 4.3.1 that will be out. And it's going to do a number of things, including closing the iPad 2's jailbreak vulnerability. Because although jailbreaking is not open to the masses on the iPad 2, some people have figured out how to jailbreak it. And also there'll be an update to the baseband for the iPhone 3GS. So according to the fixes from Boy Genius report, the baseband, that's the thing that communicates with the cell phone tower. There'll be updates for the iPhone 3GS and the original iPad There'll also be fixed memory hang that results in memory corruption when reading large files from USIM file systems. I'm not technical enough to know what that means, but it has to be good if memory leakages are stopped. Also, there's going to be fixing a problem with NTLM authentication in apps and on websites. Also, fixed an issue with the springboard in third-party apps not recognizing the gyroscope on the iPad 2. And of course, the iPad 2 jailbreak vulnerability is going to be fixed. So, look, I expect that the people behind the jailbreaking are going to wait until this iOS 4.31 comes out, and then they're going to release their jailbreak, because it's a cat and mouse game between the jailbreakers and Apple, and the jailbreakers know that Apple with a patch will fix it. So if they know if a patch is coming up, they're not going to release an update now for the jailbreak. They're going to wait until Apple releases its latest version of the iOS. It sounds complicated, and it is if you're a jailbreaker, but any updates to the iOS are welcomed. Now, some people have been wondering whether they should upgrade from the first iPad to the iPad 2, but I think professionals and people using it in a professional capacity should, and particularly people in the enterprise. And one website that I read pretty often is one that's geared to professionals in the form of attorneys and lawyers, and that's called themaclawyer.com. And the guy who writes for it, Benjamin Stevens, he had an article out on March 9th, what the iPad 2 means for lawyers. And he really says that the iPad 2 should be an upgrade for lawyers for two major things that are added. One is the camera, and the second is the HDMI out connection. And he says that the cameras are really going to help attorneys. And he gives examples. He says, first, attorneys can have impromptu video conferences. You could speak with your expert witness. You're no longer going to have an abstract conversation. Instead, you can see each other face to face from around the globe. You can get a feel for them as witnesses, and develop a report using more than just your voice. The camera also allows you to tell and show. He says, how many times have you tried to explain something over the phone only to confirm by saying, see what I mean? With dual cameras, you can communicate face to face, demonstrate complex ideas, or even use the back-facing camera and show some video of a document, diagram, or demonstrative while it is being marked up. He also gives an example how the cameras can be used for site walkthroughs. He says, how many times have you walked through the site of a loss only to leave with a few photographs? Don't get me wrong, photographs are invaluable, but being able to take video adds temporal spatial context to the photos. It is if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then video is worth 3,000 words or 30,000 words per second. Then he also makes a point about the HDMI adapter as being something that would be worthy of an upgrade for attorneys. He points out some of the things that you can do with that if you're an attorney. You can charge your iPad while presenting. The new 30-pin to HDMI adapter allows for a standard 30-pin connection for power and video out via the HDMI. No more worrying about your iPad's battery dying. Turn off the sleep function and turn up the brightness. He also points out for attorneys that the HDMI carries audio and video. One connector makes all of this magic happen. Sharing multimedia presentations is easy because you just need to worry about one cable. He also points out that you now have 1080p and 720p. You're not limited to 1024 times 768 anymore. All of your presentations, photos, and videos get the big screen treatment, so you and your audience see every little detail. Then finally, he says video mirroring. What you see on your iPad screen is what you get on the big screen. Apps, presentations, video, everything. So I think he's right. I would add two other reasons that you should upgrade. Is the lightness, the thinness of it. As a professional, it's easier to carry around. It's less bulky. It's more it's less conspicuous when you bring the iPad to a meeting in a professional setting, because it says it's getting thinner and thinner and lighter, and people don't really see it. They think it's just a pad of paper. And the other is the processing speed and the additional RAM. Like I've mentioned, there are professional apps to show PDFs and to load PDFs as exhibits. And when you load big PDFs, the old iPad would crash. And also the video processing is much quicker. So when you're flipping through PDFs and presentations or even using Keynote, it runs faster with the iPad 2 than the first iPad. So look, whether you're an attorney or any professional, if you're using the iPad a lot, it's worth spending a couple $100 to sell your iPad and buy the new one and get better performance. Okay, so one new app that I got that I would recommend and use on your iPad 2 is the $1 Incredibooth app that runs both on the iPad as well as the iPhone. And I'll give credit to Sarah Lane over at the Twit Network, because on her iPad show with Leo Laporte they mentioned it. And it's really cool. For 99 cents, basically it serves as a photo booth. It's like the old time, photo booths where you go into a carnival and go in and take like 4 pictures really quickly. But it's a very simple app. It takes 4 pictures at a shot, and it gives you 4 different settings, including like these sort of black and white settings and just sort of InstaBooth settings. And you can send the strip of 4 shots by email or save it, or you can select one picture and just email or save that. So it's really kind of fun. And what's cool is with the iPad you can prop the iPad up, and you know how if you've got the smart case, you can prop it up in vertical mode, and it just becomes like this big screen, and have it take pictures through the front camera. And so it's kind of cool. It's sort of like it's a simpler form of photo of the a photo booth app. And I guess the cool part is that it can take 4 shots at a time in a strip, and you have 4 different settings. Now, who knows? There might be more settings in the future, but it's fun. It's only 99 cents, and I think it's a good addition to the arsenal of camera apps that you can have on the iPad 2.
So I came across this article by some website called benzinga.com that says Apple blacklists iPad 2 buyers. And I kind of disagree with the post here, because what this person, Edgar Roth of benzinga.com, claims is that they're being blacklisted. But what's going on is that Apple is enforcing its policy of only 2 sales of iPad 2s to customers, and you can't buy more. And you can't buy more if you line up and wait in line again. And I think that's reasonable. I mean, there is an iPad 2 shortage. There's a huge demand for it, and we don't want people to hoard these and just resell them for profit and, keep selling them and selling them and selling them. And this guy says, that he at 9 p.m. local time, I lined up at an Apple store at the Gateway in Salt Lake City, Utah, to purchase 2 iPad 2s that would go on sale at 9 a.m. the next morning. I was informed by one employee that night that I would not be able to buy any more iPad 2s because I have bought some already before. Every single iPad 2 I have bought, I have waited in line for, including a 21-hour wait last week. Every iPad I have bought legitimately with absolute respect for the Apple Store and others in line, but since I've been such a great customer for this past week, they won't sell to me anymore. Well, he doesn't mention what he does with the iPads that he buys, and why does he need more than 2? I mean, he needs more than 2 because he's probably reselling them at a huge profit, because there's a huge market in China and overseas for iPad 2s. Look, if you got one extra one, that's fine. So he goes on to say, I'm writing this now because I am mad. I'll admit that I still received iPad 2s today from some unknown employees of mine, So those 12 hours were not a complete loss, but a loss of 2 additional iPad 2s. It just means I will have to go again another day. Well, what is this guy doing with the iPad 2s? I mean, he's got people buying them for him. It sounds like he's basically, you know, buying them up so that he can resell them. So, look, I understand, if you're waiting in line and you have the right to buy 2, buying another one, as long as you fit within Apple's rules. And I think Apple's rules are fine. So, I don't know. Let me know if you have any other views. Okay, so thanks for listening to episode 46 of the iPad podcast by MaxFuture.com. This is Lex, and please check out the website at MaxFuture.com. You can also leave voice comments, which I can play if you have any questions about the iPad or the new iPad 2. You can leave voicemails at the Google Voice number of 617-826-9676. That's 617-826-9676, or you can send a question or a comment at maxfuture@gmail.com. So this is, again, episode 46. See you next week.